All right, welcome. Today, we're going to tackle something most of us have seen, but maybe don't fully get, our lipid profile. You know, that cholesterol report. We're going to go way beyond just good and bad to figure out what's really happening inside our bodies. So, you get that blood test back, right? You see these letters, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and a bunch of numbers next to them. Maybe your doctor says one is good, one is bad, but what does that really mean for your health? Let's break it down together.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. We'll meet the two most famous characters in this whole cholesterol story. For decades, the story has been super simple. You've got a good guy and you've got a bad guy.
First up, the one that always gets the bad rap, low-density lipoprotein, or LDL. The easiest way to think about it as the litter bug. See, its job is to deliver cholesterol to your cells, but when you have too much of it, it gets sloppy and starts dropping that cholesterol where it shouldn't, like all along the walls of your arteries. And when you look at the evidence against LDL, the rap sheet is pretty long. It's not just about your arteries. Research links it to a higher risk of heart disease, for sure, but also things like fatal prostate cancer in some groups, and even cellular damage from oxidative stress. And what's wild is that our everyday lives, what we eat, how stressed we are, can push these numbers in the wrong direction.
But hey, every story needs a hero, and that's supposed to be high-density lipoprotein, or HDL. This is our cleanup crew. HDL's job is literally to drive around, pick up all that excess cholesterol that the litter bug dropped, and haul it back to the liver to be safely thrown out.
And the science really backs this up. Higher levels of HDL pretty consistently mean lower risk for cardiovascular problems. And here's the cool part. We actually have some control over this one. Things like exercise and what you eat can actively help you raise your HDL.
So there you have it. The classic story we've all heard a million times. LDL is the bad guy clogging things up. HDL is the good guy cleaning up the mess. It's a really neat, simple story. But what if I told you that's just chapter 1?
And this is where we get to the plot twist. Because the real story of what's happening in your blood is so much more complicated, and honestly, so much more interesting. It's not just about good guys and bad guys.
So think about this for a second. What if looking at LDL or HDL by itself is like trying to understand a movie by only watching one actor? The real story, the real risk, isn't in the individual characters. It's in how they interact with each other.
And that brings us to this third character, one that often kind of gets ignored, triglycerides. Now, these are just a type of fat in your blood your body uses for energy. They're not evil, but when you have too many of them, they become a really big problem in our story.
And triglycerides are sensitive, really sensitive. The research shows they can shoot up from eating too late, from certain diets, and even from stress. They are a huge part of something called atherogenic dyslipidemia, which is really just a fancy way of saying a very dangerous mix of fats floating around in your blood.
This is where the plot just gets so much more interesting. Instead of just looking at the individual numbers, a lot of experts are now looking at ratios. And probably the most powerful one is the triglyceride to HDL ratio. This one number tells you so much about the balance between that problematic fat and your cleanup crew.
And this number right here, wow, it shows you exactly why that ratio is such a big deal. One study found that folks with the highest TG to HDL ratio had a nearly 3 times higher risk for heart attacks and strokes. But here's the real shocker. That was true even if their quote-unquote bad LDL cholesterol looked perfectly fine. That's a massive clue that LDL is not the whole story.
And the plot thickens even more when we uncover this, a hidden player called remnant cholesterol. You can basically think of it as all the cholesterol that's left over after you subtract the LDL and HDL. It's the cholesterol being carried by those triglyceride particles we were just talking about.
And the key here is that this leftover cholesterol is far from harmless. In fact, research shows it's a huge risk factor for peripheral artery disease. That's when the arteries in your legs and arms get clogged, even in people whose LDL levels look totally normal. It's like another villain was hiding in plain sight the whole time.
Okay, I know. After all these plot twists and hidden characters, you might be feeling a little powerless. But here's the great news. You are not just a spectator in this story. You're the writer. You actually have the power to change the script.
So how do we do that? Well, our actions have a direct, measurable impact. I love this one example. A study had women with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease do Pilates for 8 weeks. And the results? They were stunning. Significant drops in both the bad guys, LDL and triglycerides, and a big jump in their protective HDL.
Diet, of course, plays a starring role here.
It's probably not a surprise, but the data is just so compelling. Research shows this clear, direct link. The more closely people stick to something like a Mediterranean diet, the lower their LDL and triglycerides. Simple as that.
And of course, modern medicine gives us some incredibly powerful tools to rewrite the script too. For people who are at high risk, medications can be an absolute game changer. For example, a drug like alirocumab can slash that main villain, LDL cholesterol, by as much as 65%.
So with all this new complexity, the ratios, the remnant cholesterol, it kind of begs a bigger question, doesn't it? Is there a single, better number out there that could capture this whole messy story more effectively?
Well, a lot of leading experts believe the answer is yes, and it's a test called apolipoprotein B, or ApoB for short. Now, as this quote from a research paper puts it, instead of just measuring the amount of cholesterol inside the particles, ApoB actually counts the number of potentially harmful particles themselves. It's like counting the number of litter bugs, not just the amount of trash they're carrying.
And this is the absolute key. Sometimes, a person can have a good low LDL number, but a bad high ApoB number. That's called discordance, and it means they have a ton of small, dense, really nasty LDL particles. It's a hidden risk that a standard LDL test can completely miss, and it's linked to things like your arteries getting stiffer.
So look where we've gone. We went from a simple tale of good versus bad to a really complex drama with all these other characters, triglycerides, ratios, remnant cholesterol, even particle counts. Your lipid profile isn't just a number, it's a whole story with multiple chapters. And the real question is, are you and is your doctor reading all of them?